as we move to speak up for ourselves, there's probably a lot of shame, guilt, anger stuck within us from years of being shut down. So it's likely to feel like we are doing something wrong, literally like we're doing something illegal when we decide to start speaking up for ourselves. So when it comes to men and boundaries, we often exist on a spectrum. On one side of the spectrum, we have men with clear, sharp edges. It's the my way or highway kind of guy. It's great because they understand the sense of what they're willing to tolerate, but at the same time, they're almost callous or don't understand what the world around them is going through as a result of who they're being. On the other end of the spectrum, we have men with zero boundaries, zero understanding of themselves, and they often mold to the environment around them. So they discover their sense of self through what they believe are the wants, the likes, and the needs of the environment. They become super hyper vigilant to what's going on, and they try to put themselves out as a particular person to fit into that mold. So it's like a liquid on this side and more like a brick on the other side. Now, there's many nuances to this spectrum and how to find a balance between the two ends. But I want to focus on the side of the liquid, talk about how we get to that point, what are the long-term implications of living as this liquid man, and then what are some of the ways that we can heal this part of ourselves, this part of ourself, and start to move into a stronger sense of our identity as well as assert our boundaries. I should start by saying most of what I want to share now in this video comes from the foundation in the book No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover. So if you find this is you and you want to take a deeper dive into how to work through this, definitely check out that book. It's the best resource for this, in my opinion. So how do we become this liquid type man, this hypervigilant person, people-pleasing type man? Well, as children, we're often taught to do as we're told, and then we'll get a good outcome. So if we are a good little boy and we listen and follow the rules, we'll get love and attention from our parents. If we're a bad little boy and we don't follow the rules or we're defiant, then we get some sort of punishment or withdrawal from love. So right at the start, we're predispositioned to become more attuned to our parents and what they want and need at any given moment in order to make sure that we still stay connected to them. So that's one way it starts. Another way we start to shut down our ability to speak up for ourselves is oftentimes as young men, if we do speak up for ourselves, men and women alike might try to shut us down and keep us from speaking up. And it can even get to the extreme end of abuse where we start to learn that we're not allowed to speak up, or if we do, bad things happen. Right? So this could be, this second part could be kind of grouped into the idea of how toxic masculinity can impact our ability to have a voice and a sense of identity for ourselves as we grow up. Now, an unintended consequence, see, we grow up in a generation where we have seen a great push against toxic masculinity. But one of the unintended consequences of that is I believe we've grouped certain characteristics that those type of men have into this file of toxic masculinity without even recognizing that some of those characteristics are needed for us to mature as men. So what I mean is, if you think of a caricature of a toxic masculine man, you probably see characteristics like assertiveness, confidence, ability to be within conflict, and overall a sense of being able to take attention or take up space and be the center of attention. These are important characteristics for any man to cultivate to some degree, but I think as we grew up and saw this push against toxic masculinity, we just dumped those into that file and told ourselves not to do that, because it's going to be hurtful, painful, or we might even be ostracized for it. So if we take all of this from our upbringing, from things we've seen in the world, I believe that's a strong reason why a lot of men grow up to not be assertive, to not be able to handle conflict, and to not understand who they are and what they want at any given moment, because they've become so hyper vigilant to what other people need. I hope that makes sense. Now, what are the long-term implications of being this liquid, nice guy type person? I believe if you exist in this way where most of your life you have found your sense of identity from the people around you, then at some point you'll recognize that life isn't going the way that you wanted it to. That the way you've been living, the way you've been building your sense of yourself isn't working, and it's not bringing the fulfillment that you were, I guess, told that it would at such a young age, or that you unconsciously believed that it would. And this can start as the rumblings of a general unhappiness. But if you are a nice guy or this liquid type man, it will often move into a resentment of the people around you, because you've grown this habit of attuning to other people's wants and needs. It feels like to you, when you start to notice it, that these other people have you trapped in a certain way of being. And you walk into a room and you immediately step into this mold and you start to recognize it. And then you become angry at these people. You can become angry at your children, your wife, your family, your coworkers, because they feel like it feels like they're trapping you in this way of being. What we have to understand is that the resentment, the anger, the hatred can often be projected from hatred towards ourselves. That we're actually maybe at a deeper level upset that we don't know how and can't assert our independence apart from other people. Okay, and when a man starts to recognize this, he starts to see that this is his habit in the world. We have to be careful here, because oftentimes we might just jump to the other side of the spectrum, straight from liquid to the brick type man. And we become very callous to the people around us. And we have built this life up, and oftentimes can become very hateful, angry, and resentful, turn into this brick and start to tear our life apart. And we don't want to create unnecessary problems for ourselves. So how do we go from being this liquid man and bring ourselves to a little more balance where we can actually understand what we want and still have some sort of understanding of what the world around us wants, and then lead the greater good? The first thing we have to do is begin to sense in our body the feeling of no. So what does it feel like when somebody asks you for help, or somebody wants you to do something, or somebody stands a little too close and your body is saying no? As nice guys, as this liquid man, we have grown up to completely numb that sensation, because we just want attention, we just want connection, and we want love. So we don't feel that. So step number 1 is begin to tune into the sensation of no in your body. This is going to take some time, so you got to be patient with yourself. This whole process for me has taken years, and I'm still working on it. The next piece is when you start to understand what the feeling of no feels like in your body, then you have to move towards the expression of the boundary. Now, there's an intermediate step here, because like we are doing something wrong, literally like we're doing something illegal when we decide to start speaking up for ourselves. So this shame, this anger might start to brew in our body. We start to feel no, we understand, we go to express it, and this anger and shame might start to bubble up. And because we want to be men of integrity, we want to be good leaders, and we want to be responsible with our energy, we have to take care of that first before we start to express our boundaries. Now, sometimes, granted, you need to express the boundary immediately. And then there are other times where you can sort out what exactly is coming up within you. This has been the longest stint of work for me in particular, is the shame cycle that I go through. So in my opinion, it's the most responsible way to start to address these things that come up in you are therapy, coaching, group work, men's group, things like that. These are the ways that I have started to work through and understand the emotions that bubble up when I go to assert or speak up for myself. Okay, so step 1, we start to feel the no in our body. Step 1.5, we start to recognize what comes up when we go to express it. And we try to clear that energy the best that we can so that we're not putting that energy on somebody else. And then we go and we express our boundary, like, here is what I need in order to be in this relationship, or in order to be in this moment with you. And the rules of engagement can change at any given moment, as long as you're tuned into your body and you know it's coming from a sense of truth within you. Now, the last piece, and potentially one of the harder pieces, because we have the habit of being hypervigilant and falling back into this liquid type mentality, is honoring the boundaries. And you have to understand, nobody else is going to come through and make sure that your boundaries are taken care of. If you have a no that's coming up and you assert it into the world, you also have to show up every single day or every single year and make sure that boundary is honored. This might take several times before people recognize that you are clear on this boundary and that you're not going back into that way of being that you have typically gone into. So you have to be patient with yourself and with other people in this process. So I hope this is helpful. I know that's a lot of information. If this is helpful for you, please like and subscribe. I would love to continue to have you as a viewer of the channel, and then share it with a friend. If you know somebody who's going through something like this, share it with them and see what they think. And last but not least, comment if you have something to say about the whole process. Thank you guys for listening. Take care.